We are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It has been since I've done a live, so I'm excited to give you the candid insider scoop with my sister Hannah here. This has been a long time coming, a whole 10 months coming, because she had a baby. How many of you have, and I'll wait for people to get on, I'll ramble for a second for people to get on, but how many of you saw her first birth story? I know that back 2 years ago, it was almost exactly 2 years ago that we went live and we talked about her birth story. We talked about her postpartum experience. You got to meet Dakota. I did a ton of education and videos. There's swaddling videos and jaundice videos and all sorts of things with sweet little Dakota, who is now 2 years old. He's enormous. He is talking up a storm, but we have had another baby. I say we because insider scoop, yes, I was there for this birth. If you watched that previous birth story, one of the hardest parts about that birth for me was being virtual. It was at the height of the COVID pandemic in June of 2020. And so I was outlawed from being in the hospital. That was one of the biggest losses probably of my life. And this time around, I was able to be in the room with her. And so today we are going to tell her entire candid, raw birth story. We will be here as long as necessary. I feel like because we were together, I don't know that it will take us 2 hours like it took last time. So I apologize in advance because we can ramble. And I'm going to do some education throughout and sort of explain why maybe certain decisions were made. You can explain that and help you understand. So I do see the chat box here. Hello, Lauren, Sarah, Melissa, Kylie, if I say your name right, Lauren, Carly, welcome, welcome. You're saying the live is blurry. It looks very not blurry on our end. So I'm going to just hope that it catches up because on our end, it looks really good. Maybe it's just, well, I don't want it to be blurry. Is it getting any better? I'm going to take Wi-Fi off my phone. Maybe you will too, Hannah.
Okay.
But I think we should be good. Let me know if the blurriness gets any better, because if not, I suppose we can switch gears and go on my phone, but that just feels really small compared to my computer. My computer has a good enough camera. So let me know. Oh. Well, would you prefer us to come back a little better? Hello, Valerie. It's much better on my end. Okay, it just needed to catch up. Maybe we needed to get off Wi-Fi. It's not blurry anymore. Okay, thank you guys for that. So I apologize for those of you waiting. You can fast forward through that if you're watching this back. We are going to tell her birth story. We are going to tell all of the raw moments. There is particularly one moment that we're I just was so praying and hoping that Hannah would be okay telling. And she's like, whatever. If you remember last time, one of her quotes was, as she was fully butt naked the entire time. We don't have one appropriate photo, which I do from this one. You weren't quite as naked this time. I don't know what changed. But there was a moment where I was like, please let her tell this part because it's so funny and yet so raw and candid and real. For those of you that have to go, this will be saved on my channel. You can watch it back later. And I'm looking at your comments. I think that's good. Okay, so Hannah, welcome back.
Thanks.
So let me give a little bit of backstory, I guess. I'll just get into it. I don't know. We're winging it over here, guys. So
no plan.
They came back to the States. You still live in Ecuador. You can check everything out. We'll link her Instagram and stuff because she does really amazing work in Ecuador. So we'll link the Instagram. They've been there. They came back in April from Ecuador. We had one little scare there where I was literally verbal. I couldn't even speak. I was so worried I was going to miss it again. Sent her to the hospital a couple of times. All false alarms. Reasonable sends to the hospital though. And then you were due on June 18th. It is currently June 22nd. And I flew into Minnesota. We are in Minnesota right now. And we were waiting for baby. I flew in on June 3rd, giving 2 weeks in advance, knowing that most second-time parents go early. I was fully ready and fully holding on to a June 10th delivery date, which did not happen. But that's okay because we wanted baby here, right? And one of the things we learned from last time was you went all the way to 41 weeks. And that was challenging. We waited around for a really long time. And then I also knew that we needed more time with baby. And given how helpful we learned me being there for postpartum was like, we wanted to have baby. So Hannah, maybe you want to share your thought process leading into your due date and end of pregnancy. How did you feel and what happened?
Yeah, so
and then make sure you speak
there
up.
are definitely people that are like, pregnancy is the best. I just love it. It's not me. I mean, I love having like a kid after the fact, so that's helpful. But yeah, I pretty much hate being pregnant.
Yeah.
Like get pretty sick and just at the end just feel so big and like this needs to be over. So yeah, I think it was funny because last time I did get induced at 41 weeks. And this time I was like, I'm gonna go into labor naturally, even if it takes forever. Like, I'm gonna be so zen about it. And then, yeah, time kept going on. And I was like, maybe I don't mind being induced. I really want to have this baby.
Started to look a little tempting.
I want to meet my daughter. So then we ended up, Sarah got in, and then I had my 38-week appointment. And we decided with my husband that Sarah was going to come with me, just so like she could meet the doctor as well, because my husband had been at the other appointments. And so we went to the appointment and started talking about induction with the doctor. And basically, yeah, so because of like the doctors had like shifts at the hospital and stuff, and I wanted to deliver with her, we asked her like, well, when are your shifts coming up in the next, few weeks? And there was a huge gap in between when she said she was going to be there. So it was like, I'm going to be there Sunday night, like this Sunday night, which
you were
39 and 2.
39 weeks and 2 days.
And then the next was going to be like quite a bit after that. And
like a week and a half. Like she would have been like 41 and a half weeks.
Yeah. Or something like that.
It was late.
So I was like, I don't really want to wait till 41 weeks again. And so basically I just said, but it feels like 39 might be rushing it. But also like with the study, what is it called?
The ARRIVE trial?
The ARRIVE trial. That like there's some evidence that 39-week inductions, like,
not a big deal.
Not a big
you say something. You tell them that it's not like. So actually, I have a video about this. That at 39 weeks, that it is considered a safe option if you're interested in it. That in theory, you don't have a higher risk of a cesarean. Flex and flow on that one, but that's what that study said, basically.
Yeah. So basically, I just said, well, I don't want to feel like I'm rushing it. So how about, because she was going to check my cervix anyway, I said, how about if like I'm dilated, if there's change, we'll go for it this Sunday. And this was like Thursday, I think.
Yeah.
And if I'm not, we won't. We'll go for like the later date, or we'll decide that like I'm not going to deliver with my doctor and just do some time. So she checked my cervix and I was dilated to like, she said 2 and then like almost 3 or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Stretched to 3.
And so, and like was partly face and everything. And she was like, yeah, things are changing down there. And so I was just like, okay, sure. Let's
schedule it.
Which I think I surprised myself a little bit. But once I made the decision, I actually felt a lot of peace about it. And I feel like, I don't know, with birth and stuff, there's a lot of opinions and everybody, has their thoughts and their beliefs and their everything. But I think just like having peace yourself, that like, yeah, I feel a lot of peace about this decision. My cervix is already changing. I want to get this baby out of me. I'm feeling peace about this plan. So yeah. And then,
well, and leading up to that, we had discussed, because Hannah, basically we had a prenatal visit, our first prenatal visit, like the day before, and which was where it came out that maybe it would be better if you went, Sarah, and you built rapport with the doctor and sort of that like, as the birth coach / doula, also sister, there's that interesting dynamic. And it's really my job for any of my clients, which you're technically in that case, I was working in many ways. I also wasn't working in many ways. I was her sister, and like it creates an entirely different dynamic, which we can talk about. But part of the job would be sort of having that conversation. You were like, I'm over it. Like, I don't want to be pregnant forever. I don't even want to hit my due date. And so there was sort of that in between where we went into the appointment having prepared and said, let's ask about when this doctor's on, because that would potentially sway you. Let's see if you're dilated. And if you are, that would potentially sway you. And then it was sort of like, how late will you let me go? Like, you had kind of a list of questions for the doctor that we needed more information. And so when you're trying to navigate some of these decisions, sometimes it's sort of good to do a check-in, see how you feel, and then see where those gaps are. And what we needed to know was, is she dilated? If you would have been closed, we maybe would have had a different conversation. Mind you, the evidence like kind of doesn't matter, but she didn't also want to be in the hospital for 3 days. So that was really important to her, given what happened last time, being in the hospital forever. If you haven't seen that, you can go see that. So, there was all of these different components. And so at the end of our information gathering session, which really was that, she said, well, and actually your doctor came in and was like, yeah, so I'll put you on the schedule for Sunday. Like, there kind of wasn't a discussion. I think she sort of like got in her head that we were ready to do that. But I think it sort of was necessary for you. Feel like that was sort of helpful for you to just be like, all right, well, she kind of made the decision and it was what you were thinking. But I think if she would have been a little more wishy-washy with it, you may have hesitated a little more too. So that was helpful in terms of having a provider, I think.
Well, before she checked me, I said like, well, if there's change in my cervix, I think we go for it on Sunday. And if there's not, and so then she like checked me, and then like, yeah, when she came back, she was like, okay, great. Have you down for Sunday morning to come in for induction? We're like, okay.
Whoa.
She was on Sunday night. She was like, yeah, you probably won't deliver before the night, which I didn't, but we'll get into that.
Cool. So that was sort of the decision for induction. And then in the meantime, I actually posted a reel on Instagram you can find. We asked the question, like, do you want to do all the things or do you want to just wait around? Like, and you can see this in some of my previous videos, but you can try to do all the things. And if your body's not ready, they will not work. Now, can they get you a little bit dilated, a little bit effaced, the head lower? I think so, yes. But if your body's not ready to like go into labor right then and there, it's probably not going to do anything. So you kind of said,
I said, yeah, let's do the things, but not to a point where I'm like stressed out about it.
Or like exhausted, Yeah. And so we did some things trying to kind of get her into labor. You can check that out on Instagram. And you didn't.
No, I did have a lot of contractions.
Yeah, it's true.
Throughout those days. Yeah. And then Sunday morning, bright and early, they said to call. So I called at 6 a.m.
I was up at 5:30. I didn't sleep at all.
And they said to come in at 7:45. So we all got ready. Sarah came with us.
Finally, which by the way, for those of you that don't know that piece too, that like I've mentioned, but one of the biggest losses ever, and for me, was not being able to be there for Dakota. And this time around, it's different. I was on FaceTime. I bought like an iPad and they rolled me around the room on an iPad stand, and it was the next best thing. We flexed and flowed, but this time around, it was just like, I couldn't even get my hopes up, to be honest. I couldn't talk about it. People would be like, are you going to be there? I was like, we'll see. Because for me to have that loss again, I was like, I can't even, like, I want to like vomit and pass out. I can't imagine that happening all over again. And so, up until that point, I kind of like didn't hold my breath until I was in the room. Once I was in the room, I was like, oh my gosh, I get to be here. Like, this is crazy. And we had multiple emotional moments. I'm like very affected by her hormones. I say I'm not a crier, although that's sort of like a lie. But in my head, I think I'm not a crier. And when she cries, I cry. And we just had a lot of like, it's so nice moments. So I got to come this time. Yes. And that for me was, just huge, given the fact that I've helped so many families that are not my actual family, my blood family. They sometimes feel like it because you get so close to your clients. But finally to get to be there for my sister and get to witness that birth and that context for us, I feel like was really special. Okay. So we went in for induction at 7:45 in the morning.
Yeah. And then took a little bit to get checked in, got to our room. And then, I tested GBS positive.
Yeah.
So that meant that I needed to get antibiotics in my system before having the baby.
Mhm.
So they
It became the running joke. My foot's totally asleep. Because they wouldn't start the Pitocin until 2 hours after she got her first dose, which I'm not used to that kind of a policy. And so it was the running joke, like after 4 hours when she was not even feeling contractions. I'm like, we really needed that extra 2 hours to sit around.
But yeah,
But
so
it
they
was
started
fun.
antibiotics, waited 2 hours, and they started Pitocin. And then, yeah, I mean, things didn't really like pick up a ton. Like I had
Nothing.
contractions, but so she just was upping the Pitocin every like 30 minutes.
Mhm. Our
And
Grace, our nurse, was
yes,
awesome.
was awesome. She was super sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're just hanging out. It was actually super fun. It was kind of like the vibe that I had thought of for like laboring at home, honestly.
Mhm.
Of just like, oh, we're just hanging out and like we playing this really silly game and
Yeah,
like,
laughing.
just dying. Like the nurse would come in and be like, "How you feeling?" I'm like, "I'm feeling fine. I'm laughing." Like, and she would
Lots
come in
of
and we'd be like,
endorphins.
just dying, laughing, the three of us, and just having
We
a great time.
danced. We played DJ.
Yes, with music and
We ordered food because you were
Yeah.
allowed to eat. So we had to eat.
yeah, before I didn't eat. And then
I remember Josh said something because especially like think back to your first labor. It was in the middle of COVID. You guys were by yourself.
Mhm.
And I remember Josh, her husband, was like, I feel like what I wish he was here. He's probably watching somewhere. But he was like, like this is so much more fun. Like this is so much lighter. Like I feel like the first time was kind of somber.
Mm.
And I don't know what you felt.
Yeah, I think just like it's your first baby, like we're in the middle of COVID, so it's just like everything was super strict with that. And like, Sarah couldn't be there. We knew like it was like everything was really different from what we thought. And then like
Mhm.
we never done it before. So it was like I think the first time that you do anything is just like a lot more like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of scared. And like I don't know how long like just everything that happens, you're like, okay, like and like maybe not as comfortable too, of just like, hey, we're gonna do what we want and laugh and like play
Right.
games and do whatever.
Well, and he said he was like afraid to touch things and, like, ooh, the beeping noise, like it's just, and that is, I will say that is the difference of having somebody that is comfortable in the birth environment there, that you kind of set the temperature in the room, that when I'm, unplugging her to go to the bathroom and help, and like we're helping ourselves to things that are already out and available to us, and I act comfortable in the environment, it sort of sets the tone for like, oh, I can do that. Or like, oh yeah, let's move the bed up and down. Let's like, here's a handlebar to hold on to as you sway, that it's sort of, that's what I find a lot of times with a doula and labor support, that otherwise it's this like, hospital. Versus for somebody that feels comfortable there, it's sort of, the lay of the land, what you can and can't do. I'll help myself to gloves for cleaning up whatever. And, and then Josh will grab some gloves, so I think that too is sort of a really good point of why sometimes it's helpful to have somebody there that knows what they're talking about related to birth. So, but it was like the lightest, most fun. I haven't like giggled like
We're
that.
like dying laughing. We'd be cracking up, and then I'd have a contraction, but they weren't that bad. But I'd be like, wait. It's like
which is how you want to
and
labor.
Contracting was like,
yeah,
now it's worse. But literally just like cracking up through contractions, and like stuff didn't really pick up. Like I was just like, I'm fine. Like, and I kept being like, I'm saving my energy because like when I was in labor with Dakota, I got like so tired, like and my legs got tired because I was like standing the whole time, and just like my body got tired. So I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna like rest and like do this station and like sit on the wall and do different things, because I was like very aware that I didn't want to like get super tired and like wear out when it wasn't even like hard labor. So yeah, and then
well, and what we did early on for the sake of physiologic birth stuff was a lot of stretches. I put her on the bundle birth warm up, which I do actually sell on the bundle birth site. That's like a process to kind of set up your body. We did that, and then we rested. So there was some strategy to the early labor piece, but I always say, like, if you don't have strong contractions, then like, it's not really necessarily helping until you have the contractions to help. Like anything you've done at home, it's basically doing the same thing in the hospital, like, and now you sort of have contractions. So you got maxed out on PIT. Their maximum dose of Pitocin was 20 milliliters per hour. And that happened at about 6 o'clock.
6
or no, 5 o'clock, because I wrote it down. I have notes here. At 5 o'clock p.m., she was on the max dose of Pitocin, feeling contractions, and sort of like her normal Zen self. But at 6 o'clock, they started to pick up.
Yeah, when it was maxed out.
Yep, when it had been maxed out for a little bit, and then you were like, "Oh, okay, there's a shift." And all of a sudden, this happens in induction. It also happens at home in early labor when you're looking for that shift into active labor, which it wasn't really a shift into active labor, but you're looking for you're like, "Oh, I have some contractions." And the next thing you know, you're like, "Wait a second. These are stronger, they're closer together. Now I'm paying attention to them." So then we're paying attention to them until we flip into the land of like everyone is all consuming. So there are those kind of stepping stones, even with an induction, that she got to experience. And that's what I started to see was this
and
breathing.
We were kind of, I think we're still kind of playing, semi playing our game. And I just said okay, I can't play our game anymore.
We're done with that.
I need to focus when the contraction comes. I don't feel like playing the game, so it's yeah, just kind of a shift of okay, I'm actually focusing on the contraction and feel like I can't, fully laugh through it and play the game or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then
it was shift change.
So a shift change happened when that was happening.
But you'd only had strong contractions for about an hour.
Yeah. And so my doctor came on, which was great. Saw her, different nurse. And then, yeah, they brought up before that too, breaking my water. But they asked do you want to break us to break your water? And I said well, things are picking up. I'd rather keep laboring because things are picking up, and then potentially get an epidural before they break my water, because Sarah said it can be super crazy when they break your water. And so they're okay, great, let us know. And so just kept laboring, and then decided to get in the tub.
Yeah. And then we talked about getting in the tub because you loved that last time. And she checked your cervix. Oh, and you were 4 centimeters. So we'd gone all day, which wasn't at all a surprise to me, at least. I don't know if it was a surprise to you, but we hadn't really had painful contractions. We meaning you hadn't really had painful contractions for more than an hour. So I wouldn't expect you to be much more dilated than that. So you're 460% effaced. They said 0 station, but I wasn't so sure about that, but that part didn't really matter. But the point being that her cervix hadn't really changed at that point, which is when she again offered to break the water. And then you said that. So then it was we were huffing and puffing.
Yeah.
And so there was a beautiful bathtub. This hospital they're in, if you ever deliver, you're in the Minneapolis area, go to United Children's. It is one of, if not the best hospital birthing center type hospital environment that I have ever been in. No offense to LA, but I would say that any hospital in LA doesn't compare to what they get to do there. So I even joke that I'm gonna come back here and have a baby because it is beautiful. The options that they have, the facilities, the access to care.
Yeah.
Solid. So shout out to them.
Huge bathtub.
Yeah. So she had this beautiful bathroom.
Yeah.
And I got it in my head that she needed her twinkle lights in the bathtub, which I can post videos. If you check out and follow me on Instagram, then I'll do a scroll or a reel or something with some photos. I took a ton of photos this time. They have cool photos from this time. So we set you up in the bath.
Yes. And I fell asleep.
So they have this super Zen vibe, right? So there's essential oils and the low lights and the lights off and music, and we closed the door and I gave them their time.
Want the music. It's I just want to be in silence.
Yeah, which happens a lot in labor actually.
And I was still contracting, but the warm water was just great. Made it not as painful and was just made it super zen. And I literally fell asleep. I thought I was not in there very long. You're you guys you've been in there
forever. At least an hour and a half, if not 2 hours, they were in the tub. And mind you, here's the deal with early baths. If you were at home in early labor, I would not have suggested a bath. But because you were being induced and on Pitocin, knowing that we have a little booster for contractions, that felt appropriate. Plus it was so fun for you. Like you talked about from the first time, how like amazing it was to be able to take, you took 3 baths throughout your labor. Like, so I wanted you to get to have that experience, but it totally knocked out her contractions. Like
by
nothing.
the end, because like I fell asleep and I wasn't even like, I was like, yeah, I'm having contractions, but it's whatever.
Josh texted me because I shut the door and I was like, I'll give them their like alone time. I'll have my dinner and like kind of chill for a second. And I thought they were like going, like having this lovely labory time. And he's like, if you hear a thump in here, it's me falling off the chair, like, because I fell asleep. And then sent me a picture of her and she's like butt naked, legs open, like, I'm like, he's like, she's sleeping. I'm like, oh, that's a problem. Like, meaning we're here to have a baby. Like, you're on the max dose of Pitocin. Like, you should not be sleeping, honey. Like, have your nap, but otherwise, like, okay,
I
like,
wasn't expecting that.
no.
It was so funny. And so, yeah, and then I was like, last time I got out of the bath, my like contractions picked up again because you like get cold and like whatever. And so I was like, okay, give me a minute or whatever, and like got up, but then they didn't even like pick up when I got out. So just like, I'm on the max dose and like, okay, here we are. And so then we had a conversation about like breaking my water. And like earlier we talked about like not breaking my water because it was like, yeah, we just still have like, we're still going up on Pitocin and we're still seeing how that's going and all that stuff.
Well, and there was a shift in your sensations. Like all of a sudden they wanted to break her water like an hour into the painful contractions. And you were like, well, now it's starting to amp up. Let's see if your plan of strong contractions and then, you know, epidural pre-breaking water would work.
Yeah. But then.
But I'm sitting outside texting with Josh being like, oh no, like, we got to break her water. Like that's totally the next step. And this is where like one of the things I teach nurses is don't fix what's not broken. And like when you're thinking about labor, like let it happen. And if labor is working, if they're contracting, if their cervix is dilating, like let it be, like hands off, you know? But then the opposite is also true that, and I would never use this terminology to a pregnant person in labor. And I only say it here because we're outside the context of labor, I hope. Is that you also have to fix what's broken. Like you're there to have contractions that lead to cervical change, which means they need to be strong and close together. And that wasn't happening. So yeah, let's have a discussion.
So then, yeah, I basically was like, okay, let's drink water. And you were like, okay, like you warned me because my water broke with Dakota actually when I was pushing. I'd already had an epidural, like, so I didn't ever experience like what it felt like to have my water break or things picking up after that. So she was like warning me, like it could get really, really crazy, really, really fast, like super painful. And I'm like, okay, like, so I was kind of nervous.
Well, and we talked about, do you want an epidural prior to your water breaking, which is normally a discussion that I have with clients because of that exact reason, especially now, if it's your first baby, not quite as much as second baby. So if we are talking first baby versus second baby, first baby takes forever, loosely flex and flow, not for everybody, not mutually exclusive, but in general, that's the one that like takes a long time, which it did, like 3 days of an induction. You know, and second babies, you kind of blow them out. Like those are the ones you have in the car, you know, and I'm exaggerating to prove a point, but like those are the ones you hear about having in the car. So we don't play around. If I am laboring with someone at home and their water breaks, I'm like, all right, we're grabbing stuff and out the door. Like we're not just like, oh, let's grab a sandwich and have a shower. Like, no, I'm not trying to deliver a baby. So, you know, I think that's something to consider if this is your second baby, knowing that things go faster. And, you know, for a water breaking situation, if you're already uncomfortable and you know you want an epidural, usually that my suggestion is get your epidural prior to your water breaking because there is a delay, at least I would say the fastest I've ever seen is like 30, 40 minutes that they're comfortable. You know, most of the time they have to give you IV fluids before they can even call the anesthesiologist. That takes a half hour at least. And then the procedure, and then it takes 15 to 20 minutes to be comfortable with an epidural. So you're talking an hour. Okay. So
minimum.
Right. So that was the discussion that we had, but
I wasn't in pain. Like,
yeah.
So I was like, really? Like, I'm going to get an epidural right now as I'm like laughing here, like with nothing.
Yep.
So yeah, then.
So we discussed and talked about like, this is what to expect.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like, my suggestion was don't hesitate. Like if things start amping up, that we want to like get it going, instead of lollygaggy.
Yes. So yeah, we called the doctor and they broke the water. She broke my water, and then
What did that feel like? That was different this time.
Yeah, like it was funny because I've never felt it, and it definitely didn't feel like peeing myself. Like it felt like just like stuff's coming out. Like it didn't feel like I'm peeing.
Yeah.
Like, do you know, it was like a different sensation where I'm like, oh, it's like coming out. But I'm not like, it's not like pee.
Like I can't control it.
And just like kind of was like, not very much came out at first. It was like this little like boom, boom of like water. And you're just like, oh, there's like water. And I was sitting like, and like I'd sat up or whatever.
Yeah. And we sat her up right afterwards. Wait, we'll talk about that. Sorry,
yeah. So not very much came out. And then we sat me up. And I was like in a squat.
Yeah, because you knew you liked that position, which we had tried. That's one of my suggestions, is to help soften everything, is to sit in a supported squat. And once the water breaks, the goal is we really want to bring baby down. And because she didn't have an epidural, one of the strategies for me in my head was we want to help utilize gravity while we have it, because we knew she was going to get an epidural and then be stuck in bed. So in this time frame between epidural and water breaking, let's be really strategic about helping engage the baby. I have an engage the baby video on that, but getting her upright, knees wide, helping this baby come down into the pelvis prior to her epidural. So we sat you up in a squat. You liked that.
And like at first, not very much water came out, and like I had a contraction. I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't like death, like that. Okay, great. Like I can do this.
Yeah.
And then like more water kept gushing out, and
she's like, it's just coming, guys. It's like just coming. It's coming. It's flooding. Do you see this? It's still coming. I'm like, yeah, I know.
I was so surprised by how much water it is.
Yeah. And it feels like more than it actually is, but you did completely soak a towel.
Like you have no control, which just feels so weird. Like it's just like,
yeah.
Anyway, and as more water came out, it definitely was like each one was like more painful and like, whoa, okay. Okay. And however long into it, I was like, yep, get that epidural started.
I started counting from painful contractions. And at contraction number 3, I was like, so you want that epidural? And at this point, she was like, and I'm like, relax your face. I have videos of all of this, by the way. And then you were like, no, I think it's okay. I think it's okay. And like 3 contractions later, every contraction just.
Yeah, everyone was like, and more water kept coming out, which was very surprising.
Yeah. It's great. I'm trying to see if I have any noises for you.
And I got up because I was like, okay, now I need to get up. And because they were worse. And I called epidural. They started me on the like stuff in the
IV fluids.
And was standing up, and then more water came out. Like, it's dripping everywhere. I'm dripping on the floor. Like,
there was so much talk about the water. I'm like, I threw a towel down between your legs. Do you want a pad? No, I don't want a pad. I'm like, okay, well, then just let it drip out.
Put a towel between my legs.
At one point, yes, because you wouldn't stop talking about it. And so I was like, well, and then like I just like shoved a towel like on either side of her, between her butt cheeks, and was just like rocking with her, holding the towel there. Like, if it's bothering you that much, fine.
This is so weird.
Yeah.
And then the contractions got crazy.
Okay. This is where the story starts to get good. Okay. So first labor, one of the like constant jokes, and this is where, because she's my sister, I felt like, and we talked about this in the room, where like I felt like I was a lot less censored. Normally with clients, they're a paying client. Like I'm very professional, I'm comfortable and myself, but I'm not going to make fun. I'm not going to like laugh at someone, I'm going to be like, no, that's amazing. Even though in my head, I'm like, oh, that was kind of funny and we can laugh about it later. But with my sister, I didn't care. So the first labor, one of the things we said was how quiet she was. I'm like, I've literally never seen anyone hardly be like, for her whole contractions. I'm like, what the heck? And she would talk about like, I'm just the silent laborer who like didn't make noise in labor.
Because you would make comments about it.
I would. And when I teach labor, you've seen me on my videos. I'm so loud because most people make noise at some point. I have a tickle.
So I definitely started making noise and feel like not out of control. Like I wouldn't say like, because
No.
I've seen definitely videos of people like really freaking out, like just screaming and like going crazy. But like where it's like, yeah, like I was coping.
Mm-hmm.
I was coping, but it was like I felt like I didn't have control over like the noises I was making, the comments I was making. Like,
And we should have written down so many of the comments. One of the things that now has become an inside joke, it was like she like blew. I'm like, okay, goodbye breath. I teach that in my coping flavor class. I'm like, and she's like, whoa. It was like the intonation of the whoa, whoa. She kept saying,
and then I kept
whoa.
saying, I've never known pain.
Yeah, it was over. I have never known pain prior to this. I didn't labor last time. That was not painful at all. This is the worst pain of my life. Like, there was a whole lot of talk. So,
and like you would talk about like say goodbye to the contraction, and like I never really got that last. Like I was like, I don't need to, like, or just kind of like, oh, I don't really get that concept. And this time I definitely like got that concept because I would, when the contraction was over, like I started to get anxious about the next one. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, here it comes again. It's gonna come again.
Mhm.
Like, instead of just like relaxing in between. And
Yeah.
that's so you were like goodbye breath, like that one's over, and just like relax. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah. Soften your
I
face.
understand,
Let it
'cause
go.
it's like, oh, when it's going, and I kept saying like, I don't know how people do this all the way to the end without an epidural. Like,
Yeah.
wow, those women are warriors. So if you've done that, way to go.
Oh, way to go.
But I will never intentionally do it without an epidural.
Fair. So I'm going to play for you the sounds. I hope you can hear this. Let us know in the comment box if you haven't, and I will talk to you about maybe posting this video somewhere so you can hear the noises of labor. This is her. Can you hear it?
All you gotta do is control your breath. Stay in control. Perfect.
So sweet. She's so good.
And I'm swaying.
Yep, she's rocking and swaying.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
So
I'm
it got
thinking of it.
really fun.
Yeah, really crazy. And like if you I see someone said like I recommend the coping flavor class. Yeah. Like
You needed it.
if you are pregnant and haven't done a class with coping flavor, there Sarah has one, or do another one because holy crap. Anyway,
It was very intense there for a
so
second.
intense.
The good news was that the anesthesiologist was like on their way.
Yeah,
So
and it
you
did
knew
not
you
take
had a
long.
deadline.
Yeah, but yeah, it was crazy. And then
I have two favorite parts other than the birth. The birth is of course my favorite.
So
this is my favorite.
Yeah, I did that, and then the anesthesiologist was in there. I started to get anxious, like, oh my gosh, I have to like sit there like and not move, because moving definitely like helps me like cope with it. So I was like really getting like, oh my gosh, I have to sit down and like not move through these. Are you kidding me? But yeah, so then
we did not check her again because nothing really had happened since before they broke the water. And when they broke the water, she was still 4. So in that amount of time, nothing had changed, which again, just kind of confirmed the decision to break her water.
So, but before I sat down, I turned to Sarah and I'm like, I feel pressure in my butt. Like, I was like, I feel pressure. And I was so nervous.
Yeah.
Because like, I was like, I don't have an epidural yet. Like, what if the baby's like about to come out and I'm not going to get my epidural? Like,
yeah.
It was freaking me out.
Yeah.
But you can do
my favorite. So she's like, ha, ha, and like the gowns falling off of her. And like, you know, the anesthesiologist is literally right behind her. Right. And we had not rechecked her, but ha, and she like comes up and like looks at me like a crazy person and goes, Sarah, I feel pressure in my butt. And like she's whispering, but everybody can hear. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, oh boy, okay. But in my mind, I'm like, that's good. The concern though is, we're not checking you because let's say you're 8, 9, 10 centimeters. They're going to tell you to lay back and have a baby. And I was like, well, that's great information. I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear it. Mind you, I wanted to know that, right? And I'm like, can you sit up?
Gotta know.
You got it. And I was like, you're going to have to suck it up and just sit up right now and hold still for this to get your epidural in. And then we'll recheck you. And I was like, oh God.
Because my nightmare was like, they're gonna not let me. The doctor's like, yeah, but just don't wait too long to get the epidural. When I talked about it with her,
mind you, it had been at this point, I can tell you timeline wise. So they broke her water at 11:15 p.m. on June 12th. And you asked for an epidural at 11:50. So a half hour later, you wanted an epidural. It was placed at 12:45 and like done by 12:45. So this happened like really fast. You weren't doing it forever.
Yeah, but I was just like, somebody's got to know because, like, if I'm feeling pressure down there, like, it's possible that I'm just having this baby.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and like I'd felt pressure before, you know, like I've done this before. And so, yeah, it was so funny. And then, so I sat down and got through getting that epidural in.
I've never seen you so controlled, too. We were like, is she contracting? Both me and Josh looked at each other like, I think that's a contraction, but you just honed in on some other level and back to your.
Well, it's like, and yeah, that it's like a good reminder that like you can like really actually like do more than you think in the moment of like, I have to stay still.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to stay still because also when it's for an epidural, you're like, I don't want to mess this up. I gotta get this in. Like,
yeah,
it's only 1 or 2 contractions,
totally.
you know. But it was sweet. Like this time, like thinking through like those hard contractions, like I can think about Dakota and like thinking about the baby that you have coming feels kind of conceptual, at least for me. Like where it's like, well, I've never seen them, and like you can try to.
Like I guess there's a baby in there.
You know, it's just like I've never seen them, I've never met them, but like. With it being my second baby, it was like I can picture Dakota and like even picture how he was as a newborn and like that's what I'm going for and like gonna have another one and just like yeah. So that felt like when I was more controlled in those contractions, like I was thinking about him and like yeah. So yeah, then got the epidural, which was such a relief, and like each contraction like got like at the ones right after were like less painful and. I don't really remember.
You started feeling pressure. You still like you got comfortable, but then you were like, there is something in my vagina. There is something in my butt.
Yeah, I was like adamant.
Butt. Like
I feel so much pressure in my butt.
Like she was very like frustrated by it. I'm like, well,
and I was like, I feel pain.
Yeah, but it like not like you did.
No.
Right. And that's sort of what I like to describe it as. Like if you've ever almost pooped your pants or maybe pooped your pants, let's be honest, just let us know that like pressure sensation where you're like, like it hurts, but it doesn't really hurt.
That doesn't hurt like a contraction.
No, it's like that overwhelming pressure was what I heard from you.
Yeah.
So you said that the nurse was waiting for you to get more and more comfortable to place your Foley catheter and then recheck her. You also started shaking.
Yes, shaking. I was nauseous. And I did ask for
Zofran
nausea medicine, which actually like when she gave that to me, I felt like when it hit, it was just like an instant relief, which was really nice because I hate feeling nauseous. Yeah. It's like the worst sensation, at least. So yeah, I was nauseous, was shaking. And like was just like, I feel like I'm about to have a baby. Like there's so much pressure. There's so much, I don't know. I don't think I said I feel like I'm about to have a baby, but like in my mind, I was like, I've got to be about to have having a baby because this is like crazy. And like there's so much pressure. There's so much pressure. And I kept saying that like feel pressure.
And I kept like looking, being like, I don't see a head, so we're good. Mind you, part of all of those signs are signs of transition. So I teach this in my labor prep class when we talk about stages of labor. Between 8 and 10 centimeters, it is normal to feel pressure, to have some doubts or anxiety, especially if you don't have an epidural. That's when it's really overwhelming. To be shaky, to be nauseous, to... I don't know what else, but she had all of those signs where everybody in the room, like including the nurse, Sarah, she was like, she'd already set up the delivery table and like was getting everything ready for the birth. All of us thinking like, you have to be close.
Yeah. So then she put the, what is that?
Catheter in. Mm-hmm.
And checked me. And I was 5. And everyone was like, and this is our reaction, like, what?
Oh, okay.
What? I'm
Yeah.
so confused.
Yeah.
And like, that was like one of like the worst moments, I feel like, for me, of just because I was like, I feel like I was super like trusting my body and like all that. And like, I'm about to have a baby, like just really like in tune and like, I know what's happening. And then it was just like, okay, I need to like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
So that was really confusing.
Mind you, what I said was based on all the signs, and this is a huge takeaway. If you learn something from this, this is what I want you to take away. Is that your cervical exam, the vaginal exam, how dilated you are is only one very, very small piece of the picture, right? Bigger picture, step back. What are the signs? You have all the signs of transition, and you could be 5 now and you could be 10 5 minutes later, right? And so easily we focus so much on the number and it easily discourages you. And I said that. I said, listen, that's right now. You could be 10 in 10 minutes. We have no idea. Focus on your sensations. All your sensations are there. Everything is right. This is happening the way it's supposed to. And then that was when we had a discussion of like, do you want to press your epidural button because you were having so much sensation, which you did. Press it for some more because I was like, well, maybe we're going to be taking a nap. Like this does not make any sense. And in my head, I was like, huh? What?
Yeah. And I think like you said that in the moment, but like
it didn't hit.
I don't know, like I think when you're there and like you're just like, okay, I'm gonna get checked.
You're hopeful. You're really hopeful.
Like it's just like in my mind, I was like, there's no way that I'm less than like 9.
Yep.
Like I'm right
Same.
there.
I thought the same thing.
Like there's no way. There's just no way. And so then when I was 5, I was just like, I know it's just a number, and I know you say things can progress, but like that's just super discouraging. Like what's happening? Feeling I'm about to have a baby. And so then it was kind of like a confusing, and like I got confused, and I got like I think just not very confident in like my own decisions or like my own like sensations, and like just kind of like I don't know, and like. And then, yeah, it was like, well, do you want, because like I'd click the button and then it was like, do you want even more anesthesia? And like, should we check you again? Right. Because it was like,
so the nurse said that you were OP, which is occiput posterior. I have 3 videos on this. Look it up, sunny side up videos. And I had been very actively feeling the belly for position. And I was like, there's no way in my head that this baby is OP. Like I am not that unskilled. But I was like, that is, if you're a nurse watching this, it's like, don't fix what's not broken. She wasn't broken. Okay. But her sensations didn't align with her cervix. And so we needed baby to likely rotate down put more pressure on the cervix, help it dilate. And so we put you in a strategic position where it was like, let's try to see if we can bring this baby anterior and kind of shift the baby, which is why I have a position guide, which they had more position guides at every bedside at this hospital, which is so cool. So I didn't even have to bring my own position guide. We just used theirs and sort of put you in an extended position to help rotate the baby over, which I think helped. Also, I think combination of, I wonder in my head, I wonder if you were just checked like 10 minutes too early, which sometimes happens, you know? But there was that was a emotional moment. You had a little bit of a meltdown.
Yeah, I had a meltdown. I was crying. And like Josh was in my face, like, look at me, you're okay. And like, she's like, I don't know. And like, and then it was like, well, we can like, there was like options. We could check you again. We could get more anesthesia.
So mind you, it had been like probably 20 minutes where it was like, let's turn you. And then you were like, I have so much pressure. I have so much pressure. And then the funny part happened before the options came out.
Oh, really? The funny part was before that?
Yeah, because once we checked you, then something else happened.
Okay. So then I'm like, I just have so much pressure.
This
Guys,
is great.
this is crazy. So I was like, I'm gonna poop. I'm pooping right now.
And me and Josh are kind of laughing. We're like, and mind you, pooping sensation is what everybody says that they have in labor. All right. How many of you are nervous about pooping in labor? Everybody's nervous about pooping. It usually happens if
And
you're
I
going to
knew,
poop while
like-
you push.
Yeah, and it's like people say pushing feels like you're gonna poop.
Yeah. And
And
like the
so-
baby's in your vagina, rectum's right here. It pushes on your rectum. You have the same sensation. So I'm like, okay, good. Like baby's coming down, breathe into it. It's okay. And Josh comes over and lifts the butt cheek to look. And he's like, I don't see anything.
And I'm like, okay, I feel like
And so I think it's baby.
pooping. I'm pooping.
She's like, it's coming. Like
It's
I'm
coming.
pooping.
I feel like I'm pooping.
So
And-
I go over and lift a butt cheek again and look at her butthole, and I see like a little turd. So I'm like, oh, okay, like there's a little bit of poop there. Guilty pooper. I love it right here. Shit happens. Yes, it does. So I'm like, oh, I see like a little turd. So I go get gloves on, thank God. And I'm like, here, like I'll clean you up, right? No problem. Like this is not a big deal for me at all, especially with it being you. But so I have gloves on. And I go to lift the butt cheek up again. And it's like full Monty view. She's on her side looking at her butthole. And all of a sudden, guys, she is pooping. Like pooping. And I'm like, oh, it's coming. It's coming. And again, with a client, I would never say this out loud. I would just like, oh, it's no big deal. Just hold on 1 second. Holding her butt cheek open while I like the whole huge log is coming out. And I'm like, what do I do? And so I look at Josh, and Josh kind of looks down. I see him with his mask on. He's like, oh. And I'm like, okay.
She catches it.
I put my hand out, and I'm like, I don't know where else it goes other than into my hand. So I hold her butt cheek open while she literally pooped into my hand, full-blown log, where I'm like, okay. Like whatever, just gonna let it like smear everywhere. This is so ridiculous. Someone just said this, there's never been two sisters closer than us two. Absolutely, that is the case as of this birth. And so I'm cracking up, and I like catch her log, and I'm like, okay, well, and then like this nurse looks, and she's kind of giggling too, because we're laughing. We give permission to laugh, and you're laughing about it. Like, whatever. Well, I'm pooping. Like I knew I was, guys. I was telling you that I was.
I told you.
So I like plop the poop in the toilet, go get gloves, and guys, it kept coming. So I used an entire 10-pack of wipes to clean this girl up, butt cheek and all, got her nice and like just let it keep coming and just clean it all out. Now, mind you, in my head, I'm thinking like the head's coming down and pushing it out of your rectum, because you're not sitting there like trying to take a poop. So in my head, I'm like, this is good, but it was.
So I actually was pooping.
She actually was pooping, which I will
really
say that is very rare. Okay. Very rare. It is not totally uncommon to poop while you're pushing. And usually we say like, oh, you're pushing well if you poop while you're pushing. But this was like, I've never seen it. I have never seen someone poop so much prior to pushing. But good news was you didn't poop while you're pushing, and it was like everywhere else, like get in the way. You just clean it out and get ready for that birth, So I caught her log.
Yes, she caught my log.
I'm going to hold that over you for like all of time.
Oh my goodness.
That's amazing.
Yes. So that happened. And then
you still felt pressure.
Yeah.
And so then you had your meltdown because you were like, I just don't get it. Like I'm overwhelmed. And Josh was like, this isn't a test. But how did that happen?
Oh, well, he was just like in my face. He's like, look at me. And I was just like, because they were like, you're like, well, we could check you. Because I was just like, I don't understand. Like, how am I at 5? And like, there's so much pressure. And like, I don't know what to do now. And like, I was like, it's almost painful, like the amount of pressure. And so it was like, well, we could call anesthesia, or we could get you checked again. And like, what do you want? And like,
there was some options thrown around, which is lovely.
Yeah, but I was feeling overwhelmed. And in general, when I feel overwhelmed and there's options, I am like,
You don't do well with a lot of options.
Yeah, like multiple options. Like when I'm stressed is like And then I like was looking at Josh. I was like, I don't know the answer.
Right.
I'm like crying.
Right. I don't know the answer. So I'm seeing them have this meltdown. The nurse is kind of like literally sitting on a stool being like, I don't know what to do. So I made the decision and I just said, will you please check her? She needs to be checked. And that this is where there's a little bit of cross the line here because you're my sister. And I know that I feel like I can make decisions for you and I'm not crossing like a family boundary. As a doula, that would be inappropriate, right? And so that's where like those conversations, I'd usually, if I was your doula, your hired doula, I would have said, take a second. There is no pressure here. We do not need to make a decision right now. Kind of give them their moment and then what feels better. And I would probably, in my head, I'm thinking just check her because if you're still 4, we have an answer. If you're 10, we have an answer. So that was in my mind. I'm like, that's what we need to do. But the PC way of navigating those scenarios as a birth coach is okay, so here's the situation. This is what they offered. And, and what feels better to you,
Yeah, so then she checked me and I was ready, right?
Complete.
And I was like, oh, finally, because this is what I feel like is happening. I mean, even at the end, I feel like I was saying I kind of feel like I need to push. I kind of there was so much. And
so the time from meltdown was, I have pictures stamped for it. Sweet baby. This was 2:14. You can see here where they're having a meltdown moment. I'm taking pictures. They didn't. And then we set up to push at 2:18. So it was, there was a 4-minute window there, that felt like an eternity, but things were happening very, very quickly.
And then called the doctor in and the nurse had me push a little bit.
Yeah, she had you practice push and you pushed really well. Yeah. So she called the doctor.
And then kind of was getting situated when my contraction started. So I didn't really start pushing that contraction. I feel like I got one good push in that contraction, then waited, and then the next contraction pushed through that whole contraction. And then the third one, she was like, okay, don't beforehand, she was like, okay, don't push really hard when it comes, but push gently. And so the third contraction, which was crazy because last time I pushed for 3 hours, third contraction, and she's like, get Josh, because Josh wanted to help deliver the baby again. He did that last time. She's like, get your gloves on, and It's he went down there, and and so it was a really small push, and she's started to come out. And it was funny because someone said she's about to come out, or I don't know who said what, and I was just I know. It's just funny because
I get it, I feel it, I know.
I feel
crowding, right?
And so and then she started to come out, and then Josh actually there's a video, but helped actually deliver her this time a lot more than last time, which is cool. And then put her on my chest. She was born. She had a ton of vernix on her.
So much vernix, completely white. So if you don't know what vernix is, I talk about this in my childbirth class. And it's just a waxy white coating of the skin that is particularly prominent when they're earlier in gestation. So you were 41 weeks. We would expect before with Dakota, we would expect not very much vernix, but even at 39 weeks, she was real cheesy. It literally looks like cream cheese.
Which is so funny because I'm sure that we talked about that when we did the full childbirth class 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But when I first saw it, I was like, this is shocking. I was just like,
yeah, a ton of vernix.
It can be whoa.
Yeah.
Especially there's a lot. But and then put her on me, and she was born, a little girl. Her name's Riley.
Her name's what?
Riley Lavonne. Lavonne of Sarah.
Lavonne of Sarah. Lavonne of Sarah. My little schmookum. She's my muffin cup. That's my nickname for her these days.
So she was born. It was
2:24
a.m. on June 13th, and she was 6 pounds 6 ounces. And today, on June 22nd, she's back to her birth weight already, so that's super great.
Yeah.
But and she was 18 and a half inches. And and it was actually, so June 13th is our anniversary.
Happy
So she was
anniversary.
born on anniversary. We're like, happy anniversary.
Oh, so fun.
So yeah, that's the birth story. Anything else?
Well, for me to get to be there, I feel like there's that like weird brain dynamic of like, I've seen it a million times, like I exaggerate, but thousands of times, thousands of births. And it's a very surreal / weird connection when like you're being told not to be connected to your patients or clients. And then yet like I'm very connected. In fact, she's being named after me. Like, so for me, I remember like feeling very in work mode and then having a moment where like, then I just, and you were weeping, and had all these moments. And then I took like 300 photos. We will put together a reel or like a photo collage on the Bundle Birth Instagram / it's also on my personal. I also took some stories. So this will be live either tonight or tomorrow. Check the Bundle Birth account for the stories. And I will show you some live videos that I took throughout. I did that for my close friends list on my personal that I saved, and we'll share some of that with you so you can kind of get an insider scoop throughout the whole experience. But it went so much faster.
Yeah.
And for me to get to be there again was just like the most special thing in the entire world. And then kind of got you recovered. It was 2:24 in the morning. So, you snuggled
weird.
skin to skin. And then I got to help with the first feed. I was there for every feed. We got breastfeeding started off really well. And then I was actually able to stay through the entire hospital stay. Shout out to United Children's again, because they were just absolutely incredible and so accommodating and just so lovely to work with. And never once did I feel unwelcome. Never once did I wonder if I was going to get kicked out, which was a constant pit in my stomach the whole time, to be honest. But we did it.
We did it.
We did it. And I got to be there and witness this beautiful, sweet little nugget muffin cup. What did
So
you
sweet.
learn between 1 and 2? What are your takeaways?
Takeaways about labor?
Yeah, about the birth, labor, birth, pregnancy, leading
Oh.
up to that.
Oh man, it's a big question.
No
I think
pressure.
anything is like scarier when you're doing it the first time.
Yeah, I'm going to
So-
have, sorry, pause 1 second. I'm going to have Josh bring the baby so you can meet
Okay.
her.
Pause. Don't talk.
No, you can keep talking. I just wanted to let you know that I'm not ignoring you.
Okay. Yeah, I think everything is like scarier and just like, oh, like when it's the first time you're doing something. And then, yeah, I think like, yeah, just like it's a good life lesson of like the first time that you try anything, like it's just gonna be harder, it's gonna be scarier, but then once you've done it before, then you have all that experience behind you, and like the second time around doing something, like just at least for me, like it's just not as like doesn't give as much anxiety, and you feel more confident and just more like even like knowing my own body. It was like last time it was like like what I'm supposed to like listen to my body, and like that felt like I'm not sure what my body's saying. And then this time it was like, oh, okay, like I can listen to my body and like I know what these sensations feel like and all that stuff. Here comes the baby.
Here comes the baby. Say
Here she
hello to
is.
little Riley Lavonne, my little sweet schmuckums. I've probably kissed her 6,000 times. No joke. Like I literally sit there and I'm like, oh, but you're so soft and you're just so lovely and delicious. She's perfect. Anyway, keep talking. I'll just hold her up to the camera for people to see.
Yeah, and I think just like making your own decisions and like not being afraid like of what other people think or what other people like what other people's stories are, or what like of people like, oh, I didn't get an epidural, so like you shouldn't have to get one, or you shouldn't get one, or like I think last time I had more of like a
sorry,
like
just wanting to get a good look.
Like, oh, I got an epidural and I kind of feel like bad about it, or like I don't know if that was a good
Did you feel bad about it?
Last time or this time?
I don't know, both.
This time, no, not at all. Last time I felt kind of like, I don't know, maybe I could have done it without it. And I think because last time I got it because I was so exhausted. And And like, I never got to the point I got with this one. I was like,
That's for
I'm in so
sure.
much pain. Of course I need this. Like, and granted, like if you chose to not have it, you could do it. And like, I think I could do it if I really like mentally chose to like do that. But like, I think anyone like could, but like at the same time, like it's my decision and like it's my body. And like, I think last time I didn't feel as confident and like, oh, I'm just gonna like, these are my decisions and I'm the one that has to live with these decisions. And I think even like being a parent for 2 years, like you just kind of have to do that with like everything, where it's like people have opinions about this and about that, and like they want to share it with you, and like you're doing something that's different from someone else, and then like you can feel bad about that, or you can just accept that like, I'm gonna trust like my own parenting. I'm gonna trust that I know my kid. I'm gonna trust that I know what's good for my family. And I think like leaning into that for like 2 years, then to like come to like labor again and like bring that experience into it. I think of like, okay, like I'm going to do what's best for like my body and for like my labor story. And like, that's okay. And like, yeah. So I think that, and like, just, yeah, I think last time, like, I didn't really know, you don't know what you don't know. And so like, it was super awesome to like have Sarah there and like supporting, and like, especially like which I think we're gonna do postpartum.
We're coming back for another live, and we'll
another
tell you all about
live.
breastfeeding and postpartum stuff.
Yes, but just, yeah, like that didn't feel like it had a great start last time. And so like to start that off better this time with Sarah's support, and then even like in labor of just knowing that like I also have someone in the room who like won't, who's gonna be like safeguarding things happening that wouldn't be good or whatever, that's like really looking out. And like, not to say that like a hospital isn't looking out for your best interest, but I think just having that extra person like to advocate for you and like help you advocate for yourself, which is even more important, I think.
Well, and they're a trustworthy presence. You know that like I would give my life for you in a second. So like I'm not gonna not speak up. I'm not gonna like be like,
right,
whatever.
Like, yeah, like even we had a conversation of like it like episiotomies or whatever, and like my doctor had like a interesting response the first time I asked her about it because it was a new doctor. And so like I just had told Sarah what she said, and she was like, well, okay, like if they're gonna do that, like they would say like, I'm gonna make a cut down there, and like she was like, you say like, no, I don't give my consent to do that. And then like I was like, well, what if I forget and whatever, and like Sarah was like, at the end of the day, like I will say like, hey, I don't think that she wants that, and like I will not literally like not let them do that if you're like not tracking, and be like, did you hear what she said? Do you give your consent? And just to like know that like whether that be something that I was aware of that I didn't want, or like something comes up and like, Sarah like knows so much where she's in the back of my mind thinking that's not a good decision, that like I know that she's gonna be like, hey, can we have a minute to think about that? And then like tell me like, hey, here's the risk or whatever, which is super helpful of just being able to be like, yeah, I don't have to worry that something is gonna happen and I'm not gonna understand even like the risk before it happens,
Right.
So yeah, I think just like having that support, and yeah, I feel really privileged to like have so much support like in Sarah, and then in like my family, and just being here. And last time, yeah, I think it was just like, yeah, this like I'm so out of it and just so like, yeah, this is what I have, whatever. But then this time, like, especially after hearing so many birth stories and all that stuff of like just trauma and different things that happen, of course, just feeling grateful that I have the support, and that support makes a big difference.
Support and education, I will say too, because not everybody's going to have me there. In fact, like almost nobody is going to have me there. And there's very little to be on. Like, I feel like what I do is not like anything brilliant. Again, like my brain, it knows a lot. So yes, you have access to that resource, but this is where like just having support having education, not going into it blind. And then also like, this is where I do have 2 doula videos, like, and there are volunteer doulas, there is support people, even like a sister and a husband or a partner, like those kind of things, to not have all of the pressure landing on one person. Even for me and Josh, like we'd like joke around and order food and like joke about her poop in my hand and, like all those things that it makes for him to have someone to sort of bounce off of like, what do you think? We convened while she was sleeping about like, I think, and I would never say this for a client because my sister was like, yo, we got to break your water. Like this is hilarious. Like at this point, come on. Right. And which I think also is potentially somewhat surprising for those of you nurses out there that I've trained, that I am like physiologic birth lady, which just means let the body labor on its own. And you're like, your sister was induced. And I think that's a lesson and a takeaway as well, that like, I support anyone in their choices. That yes, I believe in birth. I think we need to revamp the way that the medical system does birth these days. But if she wants to be induced, we can make the most of that. If you have a provider that's not supportive or does things that like you don't agree with, or, is pushing for those things, we can navigate that scenario. You're giving birth in an environment that, fill in the blank. Like there's nothing to me we can't navigate. And it's not about my decisions. Those of you doulas out there, those of you nurses out there, we have to check our bias. Those of you pregnant people out there, or moms, or people that have had babies, like you and families. We all have our opinions about what birth should look like. And we all need to be very careful about exercising our opinion for the exact reason that you talked about in that case, but that it's not about my bias. It's not about what I believe about birth. And would I have done the same thing? I don't even know, because I'm not thinking about it through the lens of what I would do. I'm thinking what's best for you, what's right for you, knowing she gets totally overwhelmed by decisions. In that case, I'm like, this is a clear answer to me, and she'll thank me later. Let's check you. Done. Don't even worry about it. I got it, So that's sort of like, my advice to those of you out there: surround yourself with do the education, do the childbirth classes. I had a conversation with somebody this week who's pregnant, who was like, no, I don't like to learn about all of that. And I was like, okay. And then she went on to say that she's watching all these birth stories on YouTube. And I'm like, okay, but like, that's your education versus like what's realistic, because one birth will never ever be exactly like yours. And this is where you have to go to the source of learning from like a bigger picture scenario of knowing how to strategize and take in the stories. Especially like, I love story, right? Take in the stories, but hold loosely to them, and know that when you hear a scary story, it's the answer, to that is that like, that's not my story. That's your story. And I'm going to have my own. And what other people think I should be doing with my birth, or with my, that I shouldn't be induced, that I shouldn't get an epidural, that I shouldn't not get an epidural, I shouldn't give birth at home, I shouldn't this and that. Like, okay. And if you're a doula in particular, please support that, and check your bias at the door. That like, it's sort of, to me, that creates a stronger birth worker. Those that can just say, what matters to you, and kind of navigate accordingly, versus kind of push your opinions.
Yeah. And like, for non-birth work people, moms or whoever that's out there, like, just, I think there are a lot of opinions, and like that we all need to be careful. Like, if I was like, oh, induction is the best, like, like pushing that like on other people, like that's not okay. And like, for someone else to say like, what, you got electively induced at 39 weeks, like what's wrong with you, like, is also not okay. Like, we have enough like negativity in our world. Like, why don't we just listen and be like, wow, like, what, you
Tell
made that choice
that.
Like,
yeah,
why did you make that choice? Like, because I was freaking done being pregnant, and like I had a ton of peace about it, like, and just went for it. And like, I have to live with my decisions, and like,
but you made an educated decision. And that is the difference. If you've watched me at all, one of my like coined phrases is like, we're not making decisions out of fear. We're making decisions out of education. And that will result in decisions that feel good and that are right for you versus like, I'm so scared of this, therefore I'm going to do this instead. I'm so scared of delivering in my car. I'm going to be induced. You know, you might still be induced, but let's like talk about the reality of that and let's understand what an induction could look like for you. And, you know, let's understand what laboring at home could look like. And then you weigh the options.
Yeah. And that like, yeah, it's cool to just be able to share your story and to listen to other people's stories. And like, thank you all for listening to this story. I mean, you don't have to. But yeah, to just listen and like, we have always things to learn from each other too. And like, we all have a different story and it's unique. And I think it's cool because I've been able to share like with Sarah in this, like, but not everybody, you know, of course is doing that. And like, if we can listen to each other and just like accept and love and be like, okay, like, and not have to force our opinions or, you know, or just say like, hey, this worked really well for me. Like
totally
that's
and it might work well for you,
but it may not. And like, it's all up to you. And even like with parenting or whatever, and like, even, you know, like pregnant friends or whatever, I'm like, hey, like this worked really well for me. If you want to do this, or like, if you want this product, if you want this thing, like I really recommend it, but totally do your own thing. Like it may not work for your baby. It may not work for you. And like, that's totally fine too. And to just, yeah, I think as you hopefully like, as at least for me, I feel like as I parent longer, I just feel like I have more confidence in that of just, this is my family. These are my kids. And like, this is my body, you know, or whatever it is. And like, but also being able to be like, wow, somebody else did it really differently from me. And like, okay, like there are things like, and I want to listen and just, we can all love on each other and care for each other and listen to each other in that. So yeah. All right. We should probably be done an hour and 15.
Thank you everyone for being with us here today. I'm just going to keep snuggling and smushing this little muffin cup. If you haven't subscribed already, we would love it. Mostly me, but I guess she'll love it too. If you would subscribe down below, give it a like, share it with a friend. Let us know in the description box, what's your takeaway from this story? And I think, you know, it's one thing for me to sit and educate all till I'm blue in the face, but also I think that there's a lot that we learn from story. We know this from reading, we know this from podcasts and other circumstances. And so I hope you had a little nugget to take away as you stare at this cute little nugget, little so Riley Lavonne. She is so peaceful and so sweet. You will be able to see her on my personal Instagram, Sarah Lavonne, because when she grows up, she's going to get bigger and I don't want to think about it. So meet Riley Lavonne. Thank you all for being with us. And we will be back for part 2 sometime in the next little bit. You can follow me on Bundle Birth on Instagram and we will announce when we're going live for that one. If not, it will also be saved and you can learn all about our breastfeeding experience, what we learned, what we loved, what worked. And thank you to all of you who are there, who have been here live as well. We've been seeing your comments come in. So love you all and we will see you soon. Bye. Don't forget to flex and flow and we will see you soon. I almost lost it. Bye.